Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the densest, most challenging concepts, extract the essential knowledge, and deliver it straight to you.
And today we are diving into a concept that sits right at the intersection of, well, ancient esoterica and what looks like hard, cutting-edge biophysics.
It's an idea you might find in old occult texts, but we're going to frame it entirely through measurable science. We're talking about the Egregore.
And traditionally, the egregore is defined as a kind of collective thought form, a non-physical entity, a group spirit, if you will, that's created by the unified, really powerful thoughts and emotions of a large group.
Yeah, think of something like the spirit of a nation, or the distinct personality of a huge corporation, or even the invisible force behind a global movement.
But our mission today is to go way beyond that historical definition.
Right. We are unpacking a specific, and I'd say pretty radical hypothesis, the bioelectromagnetic theory of egregore formation.
And this theory basically asserts that these collective minds, these psychic entities that have shaped so much of history, they aren't products of some kind of mystical invocation.
Not at all. It suggests they're a direct, predictable, and even measurable consequence of human physiological function.
We're going to explore how the individual human body, and specifically the absolutely massive bioelectric field that's generated by the heart, might serve as the biological mechanism to create and sustain these fields.
So the key question driving our entire deep dive today is, well, it's a profound one.
It is.
What if these large-scale collective intelligences, the ones that dictate our laws, define our cultures, and drive history, are just a natural emergent property of human bodies synchronizing?
What if we've been calling physics magic for thousands of years?
Yes. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to follow the structure of the source material pretty closely.
We'll start with the definitions to set the stage, then use the human body itself as a kind of intuitive guide before getting into the really technical mechanics of how these things are created.
And then we'll get to the really radical implications this theory has for ancient spiritual practices and really the entire sweep of human history. All right, so to begin, we need a precise vocabulary. We have to know what we're talking about. The word egregore itself is ancient.
It's derived from the Greek egregore.
Which means watchers.
Right. And that gives you a hint about the original idea, a kind of large-scale consciousness that observes, that oversees, and that ultimately influences its own creators.
The traditional view, the one you find in esoteric and occult literature, is that the egregore is a semi-autonomous entity.
It's a being that, once it's formed by a collective will, it acquires a life and an agency of its own. And crucially, it feeds back. It influences the behavior and the consciousness of the very group that brought it into existence.
It's an intelligent self-feeding system.
But this bioelectromagnetic hypothesis, it just changes the lens completely. It gives us a testable mechanism, and it strips away that supernatural veneer.
So the core assertion here is that the egregore is not mystical. It is a physically coherent, powerfully amplified, and self-sustaining bioelectromagnetic field.
And this field, this is the critical part, is generated through physiological entrainment.
Entrainment meaning, what, a rhythmic frequency locking?
Exactly. The rhythmic locking of multiple individuals' cardiac fields. Their hearts literally start to beat in a synchronized, coherent pattern.
It's so important to understand the hierarchy of power here. If this source material is correct, the energy driving these vast collective thought forms is not coming from the brain.
Right, which feels counterintuitive because the brain is the seat of conscious thought.
The brain might be the source of the thought, the origin of the idea, but the heart is the necessary high-power transmitter. It's the energetic engine.
That's a great way to put it. But this high-powered broadcast, it needs structure. You can't just have pure raw energy flying around. You need information to give that power direction and, a defined behavior.
And that is the function of the Memeplex.
So to define that information component, we have to start with the meme. Now, this is the basic unit of cultural information, an idea, a belief, a phrase, a pattern of behavior.
Anything that successfully replicates and spreads from person to person within a culture. But a lone meme is, well, it's rarely powerful enough to sustain something as big as an egregore.
Which is why we immediately have to move up to the Memeplex. This is a dense cluster, a complex of interconnected and mutually supportive memes.
It's like an entire operating system for a belief.
Exactly. It's not just the simple idea of God is good, it's the entire theological framework, The rituals, the stories, the ethical codes, the social structures, everything that supports and interlinks that core belief.
So a political ideology, or the core tenets of a scientific discipline, or the deeply rooted shared history of a powerful nation, these are all memeplexes.
And now we get to the core synthesis of the theory, and it uses that classic computing analogy, but it draws a really sharp distinction.
This is where the whole hypothesis, for me at least, really clicks into place. The analogy goes like this. The individual human beings, the believers, the members of the organization, us, we serve as the distributed hardware.
We're the biological systems providing the necessary power source and the processing capabilities.
Okay, so if we're the hardware, then the memeplex is the static code. It's the DNA, the blueprint.
Right. It provides the structured instructions, the operating system, that dictates the behavior, the structure, and the future function of the collective entity. The memeplex is just dormant potential, waiting for power.
And finally, the egregore itself is the running software, the active process.
Yes, it is the live execution of that code, and it is broadcasted, reinforced, and sustained by the coherent, unified bioelectromagnetic heart field of the collective.
The significance of this distinction is huge. It moves the discussion beyond a simple metaphor.
It does. We have to differentiate between the static code, the memeplex, and the active dynamic energy field, the egregore. The code tells the group what to believe and how to behave.
But the active field provides the energetic force, the physical coherence, and the capacity for that belief system to actually exert measurable influence in the world.
As the source material puts it, it's the profound difference between having the architectural blueprint for a building and actually having the fully operational, powered-up skyscraper.
And I think the beauty of this theory is that it gives us a clear mechanism for studying ideological forces. We can analyze the code, which is the memeplex, and then look for the energetic signature, the egregore. Okay, so here's where the theory really anchors itself in intuition, because it asks us to stop looking outward at history and ideology for a second and start looking inward.
Right. To understand the feeling of being part of a collective intelligence, it asks us to just consider the structure of our own bodies.
This is a really crucial foundational step. The source material argues that every single human individual is, in the most literal sense, the egregore of their own body.
We tend to think of ourselves as singular, unified beings, but physiologically we are a staggering collective. We're made of roughly 30 to 40 trillion individual cells.
40 trillion. And these cells, they aren't just inert blocks of material, right?
Not at all. Every single cell is a complex machine with its own specific function, its own local metabolism, and its own unique localized intelligence. A liver cell is running a radically different program than a neuron or a skin cell.
Yet they are all cooperating perfectly.
And through these highly complex signaling processes, chemical communication, neural feedback, and most importantly for this theory, bioelectromagnetic coherence, these trillions of specialized semi-autonomous units merge.
They form one single autonomous self-aware entity. You. Your consciousness, your identity, your continuous sense of self.
That is the highly emergent result of this massive cellular collaboration, sustained moment by moment.
So if you were to, I don't know, adopt the perspective of a mitochondrion inside a muscle cell, the person who's listening to this deep dive is a vast, almost godlike emergent spirit.
A governing software that coordinates the distributed hardware of the tissues and organs. From the cell's point of view, you are the vast governing collective intelligence.
And that analogy provides the necessary intuitive leap for what I think is the most difficult concept in the theory.
The hyperobjects.
A hyperobject.
Yeah.
An entity so vast in its temporal and spatial dimensions that its constituent parts struggle to even perceive the whole.
Exactly. The source material states pretty profoundly that neither the individual cell nor the individual human is typically aware of the egregore to which they belong.
It's like a fish trying to perceive the concept of the ocean.
Or an ant trying to comprehend the entire city infrastructure it's scurrying across. The scope is just too vast.
And the difficulty of perception isn't a failure of intelligence. It's a consequence of what the source calls embeddedness.
Yes. We cannot step outside of our own physical system. We are the distributed hardware, and the operating system, the collective belief system, the national identity, the religious paradigm is running on us.
The social egregore is a hyperobject because to us as individuals, its existence is often only perceived indirectly.
Right. Through things like unquestioned laws, fundamental cultural narratives, or ideological assumptions that feel so primal they resist any kind of challenge. They are the unexamined axioms of your reality, and they were placed there by the governing software.
This is such a powerful analysis because it grounds this abstract idea of a collective spirit in our own physical experience.
This framework suggests that these social egregores, just like us as individuals, possess their own agency, their own collective memory, and the ability to influence events.
Existing as singular entities composed entirely of human cells.
And if that's the case, if the human organism is the precedent for the social organism, then these things, they have to be everywhere. So let's shift our gaze from the microcosm of the cell to the macrocosm of society. If we accept that cellular precedent, we realize that egregores aren't just reserved for, massive institutions or ancient secret societies.
No, the theory emphasizes the complete ubiquity of these fields. They're woven into the very fabric of our daily lives.
They're everywhere. From the bedroom to the boardroom, the smallest unit of society is where this process begins.
The family.
That's right. The theory suggests that everyone is born into a primal egregore, the familial egregore.
So every family unit generates its own unique, persistent bioelectromagnetic field.
Yes, a field that's shaped by generations of shared traumas, unspoken secrets, consistent emotional patterns, behavioral legacies.
And the influence of this familial field must be massive. It starts to entrain the hearts and minds of family members from infancy.
It doesn't just pass down genes, it passes down a specific energetic frequency, a specific vibe that dictates these idiosyncratic paths of emotional and personal development.
Which is why specific family dynamics, even after members move across continents, persist with this uncanny power.
The children are running the same software, broadcasted by the same ancestral hardware.
And this phenomenon just scales up exponentially. Every cohesive social circle, every professional team, every focused hobby group, it generates its own relational thought form.
Some are highly coherent and strong. That's when you get that intense, almost palpable group vibe, while others remain weak and fragmented because of misalignment.
But they're not eternal. The source material is clear that egregores are mortal.
They can be completely deactivated or lost if their core memetic structures are forgotten or challenged beyond repair, or if that necessary energetic entrainment just stops for a long enough period.
Which means we exist within a vast egregore ecosystem.
It's described as a collective energetic layer surrounding and within us, acting as the invisible architects of our collective experience.
And this helps bridge a historical gap, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The source material notes parallels between this theoretical ecosystem and what the ancients called the spirit world, or the astral plane.
Or maybe most compellingly, the powers and principalities mentioned in ancient texts.
These large-scale, intelligent forces that exert dominion over the human landscape and drive the flow of history. It's like we're being given a scientific lens to view these massive, unseen societal forces that predate our current ideologies.
And crucially, these entities are dynamic. They evolve just like genetically coded organisms. They adapt to new conditions, shed old memes, absorb new ones, all to maintain coherence.
And if they evolve, they must also reproduce. The theory uses this startling term, mating.
Mating. It's when two previously distinct memetic lineages combine their DNA, their core beliefs, to form a new hybrid bioelectromagnetic signature, a new egregore entirely.
This is a really powerful concept for historical analysis. We have to talk about the case study the source uses, the emergence of Christianity.
Right. The theory views Christianity not as some sudden divine event, but as the incredibly successful offspring of the mating between two vastly powerful existing memeplexes.
Okay, which two?
First, you have the Judaism memeplex, a powerful, highly structured code that provides the foundation of monotheism, deep ethical law, covenant, a sophisticated sense of historical narrative.
So it provided the essential robust structure.
The backbone. And second, you have Greek philosophy, particularly Platonic and Stoic thought.
And that memeplex provided the intellectual sophistication, the concept of a universally applicable logic, the appeal to reason, and the capacity for geographic and demographic expansion that the Judaism code on its own kind of lacked.
That's it. The Judaism memeplex provided the depth and the structure, but the Greek philosophy memeplex provided the universality and the necessary interface to entrain all these diverse populations.
Fascinating. So the resulting hybrid entity, the early Christian egregore inherited traits that made its collective energetic field uniquely potent.
Exactly. It was structured enough to survive persecution, that's the Judaic resilience, yet universal enough to appeal to Roman citizens, Egyptian peasants, and Greek philosophers alike. That's the Hellenic universality.
And that combination generated a bioelectromagnetic field so robust and memetically inclusive that it was able to entrain, synchronize, and ultimately dominate the consciousness of millions across the Roman Empire and beyond.
Becoming one of the most powerful and enduring hyperobjects in human history.
Okay, so we have the components, we have the ecosystem, and the evolutionary history. Now we get to the technical heart of the theory. How does this process actually happen?
How does the static code become a living entity?
Right. It requires a specific process, what the source calls the recursive feedback loop.
To achieve full life, the informational component, the memeplex, and the energetic component, the heart field, they have to lock together in a specific nonlinear way.
And the egregore is the emergent property. It's a macro-level phenomenon that acquires an autonomy you can't just calculate by adding up the intentions of the individual participants.
It has to cross a measurable complexity threshold. When the individual cardiac fields synchronize, the collective system literally begins to self-organize, acquiring that agency we talked about earlier.
So let's break down the mechanics, starting with the collective encoding.
All right, stages 1 and 2 involve the encoding and modulation of the memeplex. The process starts simply. Individuals engage simultaneously in the shared memeplex.
So this could be in a structured ritual, a massive crowd chanting a shared slogan.
Or even a highly focused collective meditation.
The shared thought is first translated into a complex neural pattern in the brain, a specific frequency signature. But that's not the broadcast signal.
No. The brain immediately sends this pattern to the heart through the vagus nerve. And this is the absolute core of the theory, what the source calls the crucial physiological detail.
The heart is the powerhouse.
The source material is adamant that the heart is the body's primary bioelectromagnetic transmitter. And this isn't disputed science. The heart's EM field is immense.
The sources emphasize the quantitative difference. It's up to 100 times stronger electrically.
And potentially a staggering 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the field generated by the brain.
5,000 times stronger magnetically. I mean, that scalar difference just changes the entire game.
It does. If you need to broadcast a signal beyond your own skull, the heart is the only organ capable of generating the power necessary to reach and influence others.
So the heart takes this subtle, complex neural pattern from the brain.
And it acts as a modulator, encoding that specific informational signature onto its high-power electromagnetic field. It's like using a massive radio transmitter to carry a small, unique data packet. The heart prepares the signal for physical, energetic transmission.
Which brings us to stage 3, group entrainment and amplification. This is the moment of genesis for the egregore.
This is it. Because all the individuals in proximity are now producing a similar, highly coherent and high-power EM signature, their fields naturally begin to entrain.
They frequency lock.
They frequency lock upon one another. Let's just explain entrainment carefully for the listener. This is a fundamental concept in physics.
Right, like the old grandfather clocks on a wall.
Exactly. You start them all at different times, but after a while, they'll all be swinging in perfect phase with one another because the tiny vibrations transmitted through the wall synchronize them. That is frequency locking.
So when human hearts are emotionally and mentally aligned on the same memeplex, they start to generate coherent, phase-logged electromagnetic signatures.
And that entrainment is the absolute prerequisite for both the formation and the information transmission of the egregore. Without it, nothing happens.
And because it's a group, this physiological synchronization results in massive amplification. It's not a subtle effect.
No, when multiple coherent fields overlap and synchronize, they constructively interfere. The individual heart fields reinforce all the others in a one-to-many process.
The result is the creation of a singular, unified, highly coherent bioelectromagnetic superfield that is orders of magnitude more powerful than the sum of its parts.
And that superfield running the memeplex code is the active egregore.
And here's where the loop closes and becomes recursive. It becomes self-sustaining.
Yes. The more powerful that collective superfield becomes, the stronger the egregore, the more deeply and forcefully that amplified energy field reverberates back into the participants.
So it burns the memetic code deeper into the individual's minds and emotions.
Which naturally intensifies their synchronization and focus, which further synchronizes the heart fields, which strengthens the egregore indefinitely.
It's a closed-loop system of collective creation and reinforcement. If you're physically there, the emergent entity uses its own energy to enforce its reality on your hardware.
And the source material provides the perfect summary of this intricate dance between matter and information, energy and structure.
I love this quote. It says, "Without the heart's energy, the memeplex is just dormant code. Without the memeplex, the heart's energy is just undirected noise."
Together, they create a living entity of a higher order.
So once it's formed, the egregore isn't just a passive accumulation of thoughts anymore. It's an active entity, constantly in this powerful feedback loop, influencing its creators just as they influence it.
But active entities require maintenance, and the source material brings up a requirement that feels, well, distinctly old school in the age of Zoom and global connectivity.
Proximity.
Physical presence is vital for the continued maintenance and reinforcement of the entity. The group has to periodically gather in close physical proximity.
Okay, but why? Given the power of the field, why is that physical overlap still necessary?
It's a physics constraint. It's tied back to the power curve of the heart's magnetic field. While it's powerful, it diminishes rapidly with distance.
So for that delicate, critical process of entrainment to happen, for the hearts to really lock phase and reinforce the superfield.
The individual fields have to physically overlap. Without that overlap, the alignment degrades, and the field loses coherence. You need that physical closeness to literally tune in and receive the high-fidelity broadcasts.
And the way the egregore organizes itself to maintain this structure is modeled like a modern tech concept.
The mesh network.
Right.
The egregore operates like a bioelectromagnetic mesh network. Once an individual heart is synchronized and entrained, they become an active node in the network.
And any new individual, just by being within the strong field of an existing group member like standing close during a rally or a ceremony, can rapidly join the network as a new node.
So the barrier to entry is just proximity and focus?
Which facilitates rapid transfer.
Yes. This connection allows for the immediate, forceful transfer of the entire group's memetic information as the new node's heart and mind are influenced by that coherent, powerful superfield.
So the individual doesn't need to read the entire library of the Memeplex.
No, they just need to feel the force of the collective field, and their biological hardware is quickly influenced to download and accept the shared code.
But wait, this is where I need to challenge the theory a bit. How does this account for massive global movements, like online political groups or fan communities, where people rarely, if ever, actually meet? Are those just dead Memeplexes?
That is the critical distinction the sources make. The informational structure, the memeplex, the code itself, the ideas and stories that can and does persist across long-distance communication channels like the internet, books, scrolls.
So the code is resilient. It travels globally.
But the active bioelectromagnetic field, the egregore, the running software, it enters a state of dormancy.
Right, it exists as latent potential.
Correct. It exists as latent potential without the necessary direct physical overlap of cardiac fields to facilitate active entrainment. The egregore effectively shuts down or goes to sleep, only existing as informational potential.
However, it's not destroyed.
Not at all. When a critical mass of practitioners or believers gather in person again, the informational structure is instantly uploaded into the collective biological hardware, and the bioelectromagnetic field is instantaneously reignited.
The egregore is reactivated.
That's why highly structured, ancient religious or ritualistic memeplexes can lie dormant in texts for hundreds of years, and then, upon a focused gathering, suddenly feel like a powerful living entity. They are literally reactivating the server.
And once that superfield is active, aligned, and highly coherent, the source material discusses its influence in a way that really brings the technical and the esoteric together.
It describes the superfield as a magical current.
Yeah.
When it's highly aligned, the superfield acts as a powerful, coherent, magical current or psychic force, charged with the concentrated collective intent of its creators.
And the magic is physics. This field is the result of constructive interference from multiple synchronized fields.
Which means the amplitude, the power of the signal is massively boosted, giving it a vastly superior signal-to-noise ratio than any single person's field could ever achieve.
It's the ultimate collective megaphone, turning focus group intent into a measurable physical force field.
And this charged superfield can then be used, as the sources suggest, to influence minds and events outside the physical gathering, allowing the egregore to exert its agency on the world. So, if we take the concepts of the mesh network and the superfield to their logical conclusion, the theory expands to a planetary level.
The whole globe.
Right. The hypothesis suggests that the powerful collective fields of all active egregores, along with the individual electromagnetic fields of all living beings, are embedded within a much larger field.
The electromagnetic field of the Earth itself.
Yes, so the Earth's field acts as a vast, non-local medium, a stage for all these energetic broadcasts.
And it couples all living fields together. facilitating a global, interconnected, collective consciousness that transcends individual experience.
Which means every individual thought, every emotion, every energetic broadcast contributes a tiny stream to a global, continuous current of consciousness, whether we're aware of it or not.
This reframes our perception of reality and history entirely. The conclusion put forth by the sources is, well, it's radical.
It is. Egregore formation is simply a direct and natural consequence of shared consciousness, creating a unified, coherent field. And the implication is staggering.
All of human history and civilization may just be the story of the egregores.
If you accept that, human civilization ceases to be a simple sequence of political events and becomes the observable record of these large-scale intelligences.
These emergent bioelectromagnetic hyperobjects.
Structuring our laws, driving our collective behavior, shaping our architecture, our art, our conflicts. They are the true underlying architects, and we, the individual humans, are the self-replicating biological hardware upon which these entities run.
The ultimate synthesis comes when we apply this lens to the deepest recesses of human belief, the relationship with the divine.
We are talking about the interpretation of gods, angels, and demons.
The source material suggests these figures are not mythological fictions separate from humanity.
No, but rather the psychic images and self-conceptualizations through which these vast historical egregores manifest to the human mind.
They're the personified interfaces.
That's a really powerful distinction. Think of them as the avatars, or the user interface of the underlying collective software.
So when a devotee interacts with a deity, they are interacting with the massive, unified bioelectromagnetic field created and sustained by millions of synchronized hearts and minds over centuries.
But the human mind requires a coherent, relatable image, a familiar face or story, to engage with something so vast and abstract. The deity is the interface that allows the human hardware to exchange information and interact with the agency of the collective software.
And that explains why gods and demons are so powerful. Yet they seem to reflect the cultural biases and needs of their creators.
Exactly. They are self-conceptualizing feedback loops. The egregore broadcasts its code, the human mind receives it and interprets it through familiar archetypes, and then feeds that image back into the system, further refining the interface.
This puts ancient spiritual and magical practices in an incredibly sophisticated new light.
It really does. If these entities are powerful, coherent bioelectromagnetic fields, then the detailed rituals and ceremonies of ancient systems weren't just superstitions.
They were functional technology.
Absolutely. Ancient magical systems, the highly detailed rituals, the specific incantations, the focus on collective intent, the geometric arrangements, they can be viewed not as mystical rites relying on unseen forces, but as sophisticated technical protocols.
Protocols designed for a very specific outcome: achieving entrainment and managing the collective entity.
They functioned as communication interfaces. Their complexity served a technical purpose, allowing individual nodes, the human practitioners, to precisely interact with, influence, and receive data from these psychic collective entities.
So the rigorous structure of the ceremony ensures maximum focus, emotional synchronization, and heart coherence.
Thereby maximizing the constructive interference necessary to influence the superfield.
So an incantation isn't a plea to an invisible god. It's a specific mental frequency designed to phase-lock your heart into the frequency of the egregore.
And the ritual is the operating manual for accessing a semi-autonomous server, treating the collective entity as an intelligent field with which the individual node can exert special control or exchange critical information.
This elevates the study of human history and ancient texts from theology and sociology into a study of, biological systems and energetic management.
That's the implication.
So we started this deep dive with the ancient esoteric concept of the collective thought form, and following the source material, we systematically translated it into a physically testable hypothesis based entirely on human cardiac fields, physiological entrainment, and electromagnetism.
We use the individual body as our necessary precedent for understanding the hyperobject. We detailed the critical, recursive feedback loop of creation.
And we analyzed the immense implications this theory holds for everything from our families to the concept of civilization itself, reframing our gods and demons as the personified interfaces of vast energetic hyperobjects.
So, what does this all mean for you right now, if we accept this theory, that we are literally cellular egregores contributing to social egregores that are shaping civilization? The question is no longer if we are part of one, but which one?
And if specialized rituals are just technical protocols necessary to synchronize cardiac fields, we have to consider the modern condition.
Right. How does the current world's focus on individual streams, virtual networks, and increasingly fragmented long-distance digital interactions affect our collective ability to achieve the critical physical proximity needed to synchronize cardiac fields?
And consequently influence the creation or maintenance of these hyperobjects?
You are always broadcasting your thoughts and emotions, and your heart is the most powerful electromagnetic transmitter you possess. What are you adding to the collective current? And what happens to the power of human intention when the hardware is never physically together?
Something to consider the next time you feel the vibe of a group, online or off.